Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Spectrum podcast. I am Jason Romano. Thanks for joining us here on the program today. As always, you can download and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, everywhere podcasts are found. And all of our content can be seen and found at sportspectrum.com, where you can subscribe to our quarterly magazine. It's $18 for an entire year, best deal around. And you get this really awesome magazine, the Sports Spectrum magazine, which has been the pillar, the foundation of this ministry for 30 plus years. It's $18 for an entire year. I highly recommend that you subscribe and get one. And also, maybe buy one for someone that you love, someone that you want to kind of introduce to Jesus, and do it in the way through sports. Our magazines have been just really good the last few months, the last few ones that we've released. John and Aaron, the guys in charge of our magazine, have done a tremendous job. And so I want to give kudos to them. But check it out. You can subscribe to the magazine over at sportspectrum.com. Check it out, sportspectrum.com. Today on the podcast, we introduce you to Cedarville Yellow Jackets cross-country and track athlete Carsyn Koch-Johnson. And Carsyn is Cedarville's first female NCAA All-American in any sport. She is the NCAA Division II Indoor 800-meter champion in 2016 and 2017. Also an NCCAA Scholar Athlete, the National Christian Collegiate Association. And Carsyn is just one of those elite athletes who has a gift. And she was a 2016 U.S. Olympic Trials qualifier. And I love getting to meet athletes that not everybody knows about and who they are, but they all have great stories. They all have the same story here on Sports Spectrum, which is pointing people back to Jesus. And Carsyn, while she had all this success, has also had some setbacks as well. And she missed the 2017-2018 year with injury. And so on this podcast, we get to know Carsyn, get to learn a little bit more about her. She recently just got married, so we'll learn about how marriage has been going these last few months. And her husband, Colby, is an ROTC and getting ready to go into active duty in the Army this summer. So I'll already say thank you for your service, Colby, and appreciate that. And Carsyn, again, bouncing back from adversity. What is that like? And trusting God in the process. She was a really, really great athlete in high school in Maine, where she was all-state in track and field, in cross country. She won a Class D state championship in basketball, Class D state title in soccer, the valedictorian of her graduating class. She was really good and accomplished a lot at her time in Maine. And even just returning from injury in 2019, she earned All-America recognition once again, placing 7th in the 800 meters at the NCAA Division II Women's Indoor Track and Field Championship in March of 2019. So let's learn the journey and let's get to know Carsyn Koch-Johnson from Cedarville and the Cedarville Yellow Jackets here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Take a listen. Carsyn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
It's good to talk to you, Carsyn. Excited to have you on and learn about your journey. Cedarville's first female NCAA All-American in any sport. I like that. That's a pretty cool title. And for most of your career, and obviously most of your life, if not all of your life, you were Carsyn Koch. And now you're Carsyn Johnson because you just got married in late December of 2018. How's the married life been going for you? You're still married, right?
Yes, I'm still married. It's awesome. It's just such a nice thing to share a same living space with your best friend and be able to, it's a lot easier actually. I feel like people were telling me, it's going to be a big transition for you, but it's so much fun and it's so much easier having someone there to support you, and you're in the same living area and able to see each other every day and not have to plan times to see each other. So it's been great. We're really happy.
Well, I'm going on 20 years of marriage this year, and I'm always curious with newlyweds. It's only been a few months, but what's the biggest lesson thus far that you've learned in your few short months of marriage?
Ooh, probably like the most negative emotions are like derived from expectations you never told each other or expectations that were not met.
Mm,
Like you kind of expected them to do this and you never communicated it because it was just how you've always done it or how your family's always done it. And then you're mad at them because they didn't do it the way you would have done it, but you never actually communicated it in the first place.
right.
So I think like expectations and just being like really clear about communicating like what you're thinking, even if you feel like it's obvious, it might not be obvious to the other person.
Did you go through marriage counseling or any kind of like premarital counseling or anything like that to kind of prepare you for, for what marriage would be like and trying to do it obviously the Lord's way too?
Yeah, we did. Our school has a really awesome program. It's called Fit to be Tied.
Okay.
And it's a program that we go through with several other couples, and we're all hooked up with a mentor couple. And through a couple books with that, Colby and I also have another mentor couple that we read The Meaning of Marriage together with them by Tim Keller.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done a lot of prep and just a lot of praying. I think like being engaged is not really like a fun season, I feel like. It's just kind of like a season of like waiting and like spending all your money on the wedding and kind of just like wanting the next step to be there. So I think it was just like a lot of prayer and a lot of like trying to talk to our parents who are both have long marriages and seeing kind of like what was your biggest roadblock and how did you work through this and what surprised you and what was better, what do we need to think about together like with our personalities and where could we have tension. And that was one of the things that Fit to be Tied went through, is a lot of like personality assessment and trying to figure out like, all right, where would there be tension in your marriage like before it even happens.
Hmm. Carsyn Johnson's our guest here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. You're at Cedarville, the Yellow Jackets. What tell us about Cedarville? I know it's a Division II school. You're also a member of the NCCAA, the National Christian Collegiate Athletic Association. Tell us about Cedarville, where it's located. Maybe give us a little bit of background on why you chose to go to Cedarville and compete in athletics.
So I actually didn't want to go to Cedarville at first.
Hmm.
I really didn't want to go because I am from Maine. So the drive is close to like 19, 20 hours from home. And it really intimidated me to go that far away, not because I'm like a homebody, but because I like the idea of being able to, like, in an emergency situation, just go home.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wasn't going to have that here. But I had some friends who I had gone to summer camp with who were like, "Hey, we're going to Cedarville. It's really awesome. Like, you should come take a visit." And I was like pretty set against it. Like, no, that's like way out of my comfort zone, and I don't want to do that. So long story short, my parents were like, "I really think you should visit." And my mom was like really set on me visiting. She's like, "I really think this is a good school and you don't have to go there, but I really think we should visit." So I ended up going, and I talked with Coach Bo and just saw the school and met a lot of the people and saw kind of what it was all about. And I knew that it was where I wanted to go. It's a Christian school located down in the corner of Ohio, down near Dayton. We're kind of sandwiched in between Dayton, Cincinnati, and Columbus.
Okay.
So it's within driving distance for each of those places. Right now, I think we have close to, or maybe a little over 4,000 students. And all of the students that go through Cedarville will graduate with a Bible minor, which is one of the really cool things about that, because you kind of you learn things through the Bible minor and through studying the Word of God and the way that it's applied that you never knew you didn't know, and it really prepares you to evangelize and to share the gospel in whatever profession you choose. And I love how the professors, like especially in nursing, try to really help you understand how spirituality applies to like the health of other people, especially when they're sick and they're broken in multiple ways, in a hospital bed, and you get to care for them for the next 13 hours. So that was something that I feel like really has bolstered my career and also my confidence as a Christian to share and to see how important that is and to understand that all the talents that God's given you, even the things that you naturally gravitate towards, like for me, that's science and math. they're all gifts that he's given you and equipped you to share and to show him to others. So that's been probably one of the coolest things that I love about Cedarville. We are Division II, like you said, and we have quite a few sports, and we're very competitive in a lot of those sports, especially the running team. We've had a very good last several years as far as I've been there, and that's only been my short experience, but it's been a lot of building from transitioning from NAIA to Division II, and of course, like you said, still being part of the Christian College Association. So
Yeah.
there's a lot here. There's not a lot in the town of Cedarville. Like, it's a tiny little town kind of in the middle of nowhere, but there's so much to do at the school and so much going on there that it's totally worth the experience.
You mentioned you came from Maine. I'm up here in Connecticut, so I know about the Northeast, and you were all state
Yep.
all 4 years in track and field, member of the Class D state championship in basketball. If I'm reading this right, this is my research, so correct me if I'm wrong. Part of the Class D state title in soccer. So you're a state champion in, in 3 different sports. I'd say high school must have been pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun in high school.
And you're the valedictorian, by the way, too. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I went to a tiny little high school up in northern Maine. I graduated with 26 kids.
26. Wow, it's so
Yeah,
tiny.
and we weren't private. That was normal. Like,
Wow.
a lot of the schools in our area were just like tiny little schools.
Hmm.
And we just had a really fun group of girls that we've all known each other since preschool. Like, we probably all met when we were 3 or 4 years old.
Wow.
And when you have a tiny little school like that, you kind of have the same people playing every sport. So all of us just played everything.
Yeah.
And we all were just really connected as a group and all like very good friends with each other. So it was a lot of fun to just go out there and like, hey, well, let's try to win this. Well, we should all run this and see if we can win this. And let's go for a soccer title. So we had so much fun. I miss high school sports just simply for the variety and especially the girls.
Hmm. That's awesome. Tell me about your faith too, because you mentioned you're at a Christian school. Was faith always a part of your life ever since you were little? Tell us about your walk with the Lord and where that took shape.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian home, which I'm really thankful for, and my parents are Christians, and my family is. And that was one of the playing factors in deciding to go to Cedarville was trying to figure out an environment that I could place myself in to make myself better. And for me, that was definitely a Christian school. Going there and it being such a big part of my life, trying to make sure that I was growing that part of me in the 4 years of college, which I think college is kind of 4 years of sort of figuring out like who you're going to be
Hmm.
when you're in your adult life and surrounding yourself with people who really make a big impact on the future you. Um, and my walk has definitely, I feel like it strengthened a lot when I came to Cedarville and kind of like started to own it, um, and realize that when you're 20 hours away from home, you're no longer able to feed off of what your parents believe or what their opinions are, or even the comfort of doing things their way because you're kind of on your own.
Yeah.
And I feel like from the minute I set foot in Cedarville, there were influences, really good influences all around me. From being part of the cross country team and having a coach who does devotions with us every day before practice, to my professors, to the people on campus, and I felt like I just was surrounded and put in an environment where there's growth is encouraged. Our school has chapel every day, 5 days a week, or about 45 to 50 minutes. And when I first came to Cedarville, I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to go to chapel 5 days a week, like, because I was picturing like the, dry church service type of thing, but it's definitely not. It's student led. And there's a lot of worship. There's a lot of fun things that happen at chapel. And I think for a lot of Cedarville students, it grows into one of your favorite parts about Cedarville. And I felt like when I first came to Cedarville, I didn't come, like you can see what my times were in high school. I wasn't like a hot shot. I was like a recruit with good potential.
Right.
But I was definitely not somebody that everybody was looking at. I mean, I ran a 2:21 in high school, a 5:11 mile, 19:06 5K. So those are all like, they're respectable times, but they're not like, whoa, she's good.
Yeah.
So like my walk with the Lord, I feel like kind of took a different turn when I started to realize that I had like a lot more athletic potential than I thought coming in. And it was a lot of like, okay, God, like, I don't know what you're doing with me, but you're like sending me to all these big races and I'm like starting to get faster. And then a lot of trusting and a lot of praying and a lot of, trying to be thankful and trying to, I think, just like use the gift the best I could. And last year was definitely even more of a like trying to trust in God season of my life when I got injured. It was the summer between my junior year and my senior year. I started to feel pain in my hamstring, and I didn't really know where it was coming from or why. I never had like an acute injury where I like fell or I like yanked it or anything like that. So I was like, oh, this is weird. I just kept running through it, and it never went away, and it turned into an injury that took my whole senior year away from me. And it was definitely like a time of like trying to ask God, like, okay, like you just took me, as high as I could go as a college athlete, winning nationals, going to the Olympic trials, running with professional girls and keeping up with them. And, starting to think like maybe I could make a career out of this. If some sponsorship wants me, like I would love that. And then I got pretty much as low as you can get, losing 3 seasons and not even being able to run at all with no pain.
What did that
So,
what did that do for you, Carsyn, in your faith and having to really explore? Because I'm sure even though you've been a Christian for a long time, identity is still a big, difficult thing for everybody, whether you're a Christian or not, but especially if you're a successful athlete. How did you, because it sounds like during this time was also the time that you got engaged, if I'm just doing the math
yeah,
correctly, right? So there's
yeah,
highs and lows that are going on here. Take us through a little bit of those and kind of what the Lord was doing in you.
yeah. So I had walked away from a relationship that was a very long-term relationship before I met Colby,
Mm.
and I got injured at the same time. So
It's like, thanks,
that was
God.
just a time of like, okay, God, like I get it. Why are you taking everything away from me?
Mm.
Like, what did I do? And I was like, I don't understand. I pray with my competition. Like I have shared the gospel with people I run against. Like I've tried so hard to be humble and to, quote, do it right in the spotlight, have people look at me and say like, oh, she's different. Like she must have something different about her. And I felt like I was doing it right and he still took it away. Um, so I feel like I don't think there was ever a point where I like was angry. I think I was just like spending a lot of time like I don't know, and probably this is because of nursing. In nursing, we always are trying to get to the bottom of something. So it's like, all right, I see
Yeah.
this, and this. What's wrong? What needs to change? And you make an intervention and you change it, and you watch for the change, and you just keep doing that until they're healthy and they go home. And in my spiritual walk, I feel like it was a lot of like, okay, what do I need to change? Like, all I need to do is just change something and he'll make me healthy. And okay, what's the lesson? Okay, patience. Okay, I'm feeling really patient. Like, I think I learned it. So when am I going to run again?
Yeah.
And I think I spent the whole time trying to figure God out instead of just understanding that sometimes we don't get an answer. And sometimes you're going through something for somebody else to watch you go through it and to learn lessons from you. And it might not even be for your own personal growth. Not that you're not growing, but it might be for someone else. And we never know that. But for me, I think a lot of it was tied up in like my identity and who I viewed myself as and understanding that I think I had correlated like, okay, when I'm fast and when I'm running well and when I'm successful, people love me more.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
God must love me more and must be able to use me more when I'm running better. Like how am I going to influence all those girls if I can't even qualify for these big meets? Like
Right. Right.
no one will be able to influence them. And I think that was like the mindset that I had slowly gotten wrapped into is that I would be more useful to him if I was more successful. And that is so far from the truth. And I think it took a long time for me to realize that, and a lot of months of wrestling with like how to be okay with being injured and how to, keep trying and trying. I think I had so many conversations with my coach just saying like, well, how do I know if God's closing the door?
Mm.
Like, how do I know if he opened this door for a short period of time on purpose and now it's shut? And Coach Bell was like, well, you can't know what God's doing in the future. All you can do is pray about what's happening now, keep an open mindset, and keep pushing until the door feels like it's totally shut.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And I spent a long year of 7 doctors and multiple MRIs and CAT scans and x-rays and nobody knowing what in the world was going on with me and lots of injections before finally starting to feel better.
And you came back and you earned All-American recognition again in 2019, placed seventh in the 800 meters. And I remember texting you and said, how did it go? And you were like, I ran okay. I mean, I don't know. The
Yeah.
Division II Women's Indoor Track and Field Championships, and you finished seventh. That's pretty good, but you also had won those in 2016 and 17, so I can understand the competitive side of you. But what was it like to come back and be back running on the national level like that? And, obviously you weren't terrible. So what was that like coming back and being able to say, okay, God, you were right. The door isn't closed yet.
It's such a mix of emotions for me, and that like I had such a hard time like putting it into words. I feel like when I finished because I just was so happy to be there and happy to run and to have it, have that part of my life back and, not have it be painful every time I ran. To get to compete at that level was just such a blessing. And, coach keeps at my bonus year. He's like, you just need to look at this as your bonus year.
Yeah.
And it's going to be filled with some really awesome things, but it's all bonus on top of what I've already done. So I was so happy to be there and happy to meet the girls and to get to pray with them and see, I love seeing people who are so good at what they do. That's what's so fun about those national meets and the professional meets, is just seeing track and field is just so raw. There's no refs, there's no weird rules you have to get around. It's just the human body, and how much did you break yourself down through the season to get to this point and to
Mm.
be so good. And it's so fun to watch. But at the same time, I wasn't content with the way I raced because I know I could have done better. But that being said, I always struggled with that, because on the one side, it's like, I feel like if you walk away from the race and you're like, well, I guess that was just, the best I could do, I should be happy with it, then you're going to lose your competitive edge.
Yeah.
Like, that is not the attitude of professional athletes. They say like, all right, well, it was good, but I could improve. And you write down the good things and you write down the bad things, and you walk away and do better next time. But, on the other side, I don't want to be too hard on myself because I was out for almost 18 months and I didn't start doing speed workouts until the middle of January.
Mm.
I am really proud of myself that I was able to get down to such a low time after pretty much 2.5 months of training and working as an RN and taking classes. So
Yeah, that's pretty good. And I like that you say, because it's kind of a parallel to our spiritual walk too, right? Like sometimes you can always do better. You can always pursue God
Mhm.
more. But at the same time, he tells us to rest and tells us to, that he's enough, I guess, that we don't
Yeah,
have to keep trying more and more and more. Have you seen that in your walk with the Lord as well?
yeah, for sure. And I think like it's really hard with running because you are used to being able to put into it and get out of it. And I think that's something that has really made me like kind of wrestle with God, is like, all right, well, if I like put this much into it, then I can get this much out of it. And that's just not the case. It's not. And with him, it's, there's no grace in running. Let's just say that. Like you
Yeah.
can't just not train and then be like, "Oh, look, I got an awesome time." But like with your walk with the Lord, like there is that element of grace that always is kind of like a plot twist. Like, "Hey, I know you've been kind of crappy and you haven't really prayed as much as you should and you're not, turning to me as much as you should, but I still love you and here's this blessing that you don't deserve."
Yeah.
And like I feel like I have seen that so much, like, especially in this indoor season and just like in life in general, with God just continuing to bless me and obviously like being there for me when I feel like, all right, I just haven't really turned to you and I haven't done a very good job, but yet you're still here and you're still pursuing me just as hard as you were before. And it's just fun to see.
We're getting ready to as we get close to the ending of this podcast. You're also getting close to the end of your college career, right? And
Yes.
what's that going to be like? You have one more season to go, right, with track and field here in the spring. Have you thought about that? That this is, that there's sort of an end in sight, I guess, in this, and you may go on to run and be an Olympian someday or whatever God has planned. And I know you're also a nurse, and that's awesome. But have you thought about it at all? About just kind of knowing that this is sort of the end here?
Well, it's hard for me to think about in that way.
Yeah.
Because in the past, I have finished the season, but then I've never actually done. Like, I just stay and train and always normally end up going to some sort of extra meet at the end. And like I said, like until that door is like totally slammed, I am looking to compete in the next Olympic trials and to see if I can get a sponsorship and to see, where the Army takes Colby and I, where we end up and hook up with a training base and keep on running.
You say the Army. I didn't know that. Tell me about Colby. He's in the Army, I presume, or going into the Army?
Yeah, Colby is, he's in ROTC right now at Cedarville, finishing up an economics and finance degree. And he will commission in the summer into 4 years of active duty. So we will get an active duty order sometime this summer to send us somewhere. And like I said, like as far as like my running career, it's kind of like pretty much all of it has been out of my control. And if God has that plan for me and has it planned for me to run professionally and to get hooked up with a sponsor, it's going to have to be totally him orchestrating it, because the Army's going to send us somewhere that we have absolutely no control over.
Well, make sure you share. I mean, he's not quite in there yet, but make sure you share our wishes to him and thankful to him for his service and all those that serve and protect us. Colby or Carsyn, Carsyn, let's end with this question, as we do with all of our guests here on the podcast. What are you learning from the Lord right now? You've been telling us a lot about what you've learned from him over the years, but where he has you today, we're taping this middle of March, towards the end of March of 2019. What's the lesson that God is teaching you in your life right now?
Oh, I think just that God's timing is so much more perfect than ours. I think it's easy to like look into our future, especially since Colby and I don't really know where we're going to be. I don't know where I'm going to be with running and, etc. It's really, I think I'm just learning that his timing is perfect, and I've seen it, time and time again, that he has opened doors and closed doors in timing that I couldn't have planned. That has been exactly what I needed at the time. I think right now I'm just trying to just trust more and understand that he has a plan. He hasn't revealed more than, a few steps into the future, but there is a plan there, and the timing is going to be perfect, as it is every time.
She is Carsyn Koch-Johnson, Cedarville Yellow Jackets, cross country and track. She's a runner, Division II All-American, and registered nurse, which is pretty cool. And I'm looking forward to seeing what transpires with Carsyn's career and with her life and her journey with Colby. Carsyn, thanks so much for being here on the podcast, and we wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
And many thanks to Carsyn Koch-Johnson from Cedarville, the Cedarville Yellow Jackets, for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. You can follow along with Carsyn on Instagram. She's at CarsynJ11, CarsynJ11. She's also there on Twitter as well, CarsynK11, CarsynK11 on Twitter, CarsynJ11 on Instagram. Give her a follow there. Let her know that you heard her interview, that you heard her story on the intersection of sports and faith here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Thanks to Carsyn. Thanks to you for listening as well. We really appreciate it. Listen, this podcast doesn't happen. People don't even know about it if you don't listen and if you don't tell others. So really, that's what our prayer is for you, is that you're encouraged by listening to these stories and that you would continue to share them, text them to your friends, put them on your Instagram, on your Twitter, on your Facebook pages, whatever it is. Tell others about these stories so that God can be glorified through the world on the Sports Spectrum podcast. And that's what we try to do. We try to bring Jesus back into the conversation and glorify him through these stories that we have here at Sports Spectrum. You can give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook as well. We're at sports_spectrum. Tag us if you're on there. Love to see you. Love to hear from you. Also, you can follow us on our YouTube channel. You can like us there and check out all of our content. sportspectrum.com. That's the website to check out. sportspectrum.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time with a brand new episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast. Have a great rest of your day.